The storyline of Rowena Morgan is quite unsettling. As a matter of fact, in today's culture, if they were to rewrite Mr. Holland's opus, by the way, this movie is 30 years old. I didn't know if you knew that. If they were to rewrite Mr. Holland's opus, I am quite sure her character would come out a little bit differently than it did. But fortunately, we are not here to discuss the ins and outs of her theatrical performance or her character. In the scene you just saw, her character is playing a character. She is the lead in the school musical. She sings it perfectly, and after all, she says she's doing her very best. However, she has no idea what is behind the song. Thus, while all of the notes and the words are coming out right, the feeling is missing. Mr. Holland wants her to understand in this particular moment she is feeling alone. All she wants is somebody. He called it the need for love. Love's a funny thing. We define it a lot of ways in our society. Really, what she's looking for is belonging. It's about time. I want you to think back to that very first clip I showed you of Mr. Holland's first day at school. He viewed teaching as a fallback position. He wanted to know if the band was any good. Most importantly, he was concerned about time. Keep in mind, he viewed teaching not as a job, but as a job, not as something that he really wanted to do. He really wanted time to work on his very own music. By the way, at the end of the movie, that clip where he was working on the movie, that's only one of two times in the entire movie that you ever see Mr. Holland working on his own music. Instead, teaching has made him much busier than he could ever have imagined. Before school, he has to meet with Gertrude Lang. After school, he's working with Lou Russ. Stavler needed to be taught at 10 a.m. on a Saturday morning. Driving lessons, anyone? And that doesn't even count the fact that he's got to do lesson plans, grading papers. Oh, and well, he actually still has to teach the class. And, well, he's running a marching band, and suddenly now we see he's involved in a school play. Talk about a life that suddenly got devoted to teaching. Acts chapter 2, verses 42 through 47. They devoted themselves to the apostles' teachings, to the fellowship, to the breaking of bread and to prayer. Everyone was filled with awe, and many wonders and signs performed by the apostles. All the believers were together and had everything in common. They sold their property and possessions to give to anyone who had need. Every day they continued to meet in the temple courts. They broke bread in their homes, and they ate together with glad and sincere hearts, praising God and enjoying favor with all people. And the Lord added to their number daily those who were being saved. So this is the second week that we're going to focus on this idea of fellowship. And fellowship got 2 weeks because the actions that the church is doing, they're all connected to this concept of fellowship. Now, understand, worship can be the heartbeat of a church. Nothing wrong with a worship service. Nothing wrong with the concept of worshiping God. Learning can create strength. If you want a healthy body, you got to eat, right? That's just the way. If you want an unhealthy body, you can eat too much, right? You've got to eat the right amount and the right things. And so there's a great thing to go with learning in the body. The idea of prayer, it's the lifeblood of the church. It flows through us and connects us. It's where we share one another. It's the reason we started Second Sunday prayer times, because we want our body to be experienced with one another so that we know what's going on in our own congregation. It was a very humbling moment. I guess, it's been about 15, 16 years ago when this happened, but the minister at First Christian Church, where I was an elder, left. And the elders decided that before we hired another minister, we were going to get everything together. And so the first thing we wanted to do was we wanted to pray for our congregation. So we decided to have a prayer meeting, just the elders, and we all went out to a place and we took the little roster of the people that come to the church, and we said, well, we're going to go down here one by one and pray for each one of them. We didn't know half the names on the list. We're the elders of the church. I mean, we knew who they were. We could put a name with a face, but we couldn't tell you about their lives because they were just warm bodies in a pew on Sunday morning. That ain't the church, folks. See, fellowship is the actual skin of the church. Did you know that your skin is considered the largest organ in the human body? So last week we learned that fellowship is about spending time together. That's what you were supposed to take home with you last week. Together, 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 together. This week we're going to talk about actually belonging together. My family, my biological family, not the ones that have the last name Creasy that live in my house, we get together for maybe 2 to 3 hours twice a year. That's enough. Okay? And it's because now we don't really fit together anymore. We've all grown up and we've come out differently and we have our own kids and our own families and we are now a family of families. And so while we get together, we talk about the past, never about the future, because we don't belong together. So this week we're going to talk about stepping into serving. And when I say that, you're thinking, oh my gosh, the preacher's in recruiting mode. What position does he want me to fill? You hear that and you immediately start thinking, I don't have time to serve anybody. Have you seen my calendar and my clock? Here's the thing. Everybody take a deep breath. I'm not recruiting anybody. I don't want to fill a position. Now, if you happen to have extra time and you're looking for something to do, come and see me. I think we could probably find you something to do, but that is not the goal of this particular sermon because it's not about titles and positions. In fact, I purposely left out 2 words in my sermon title this morning. So it's not stepping into serving. The sermon title is Stepping into Serving One Another. Galatians chapter 5, verse 13. You, my brothers and sisters, were called to be free, but do not let your freedom indulge the flesh. Rather, serve one another humbly in love. This church thing, it is a body. Paul's analogy, not mine. 1 Corinthians chapter 12, verses 12 through 14. Just as a body, though one, has many parts, but all its parts form one body. So it is with Christ, for we were all baptized by one Spirit so as to form one body, whether Jew or Gentile, slave or free, and we were given the one Spirit to drink. Even so, the body is made up of one. The body is made up of. I wrote that down. I copied it wrong. The body is not made up of one, but part of many. So Paul uses a body. We've been trying to use a band. But do you know, a band and a body has many things in common. It's just the band is a little easier to see. You see, both are considered one thing, right? That's the way this works. Both are considered one thing. A band, you can't have 2 bands together trying to play 2 different things. That is considered chaos. So it is with the body. The body says that, hey, Paul says, hey, we were all baptized by one Spirit and form one body. A band has one name, plays one piece of music at a time, no matter how many pieces it has. Both are also made up of many parts. This is what it says about that. It says, even though the body is not made up of one part, but many. There are many people here today, and each person plays a part. In a band, they have sections. The sections have multiple instruments, and even amongst the instruments, there are a variety of types. I've been doing band a long time, folks. Okay, I never have done band. I've been going to watch band for a long time, and I'm in my runway landing here. We're almost done with my band. Then, of course, maybe in college I'll be back in band. Who knows? But keep in mind, both need all their parts to be complete. Verse 21 in Corinthians says, the eye cannot say to the hand, I don't need you. And the head cannot say to the feet, I don't need you. Your body doesn't look at each other and say, well, you are not that important to me. Get out. Okay? Your body is designed to fit together. And you know what? In a band, if there are pieces and parts that are missing, there's no other instrument that can do exactly the same thing. I mean, they can come close, and maybe you can make this instrument sort of play this part, but you understand the music was designed for a specific piece. Just like your body, your physical human body, was designed for a specific function. I know people that can walk on their hands. I cannot. But you know what? Your hands were not designed to walk on. Okay? It hasn't how it was supposed to work. My eyes can't hear. Some people will say my ears can't hear anymore. My eyes can't hear, my ears can't see, and my mouth runs way too much. And you know what? My nose is only designed to smell things. That's what it's for. I have to have all the pieces, and I have to have all the parts for my body to be complete. In both the body and in your band, there may be more prominent parts, but there are no more important parts. Now, if the foot says, because I am not a hand, I do not belong to the body, it would not be for that reason stop being part of the body. And if the ear should say, because I am not an eye, I do not belong to the body, it would not be for that reason stop being part of the body. If the whole body were an eye, where would the sense of hearing be? If the whole body were an ear, where would the sense of smell be? But in fact, God has placed the parts of the body, every one of them, just as He wanted them to be. In a band, there is an overtone, timbre, pitch, amplitude, duration, melody, harmony, rhythm, texture, structure, form, expressions, tempo. Yeah, I know very little about music, but I know how to read the terms I find on YouTube. But what I have learned, at least from my kids in band, is there's no such thing as a band instrument that carries a piece. One instrument is never the focal point of a band. So it is with your physical body. As important as your brain is, what would it be without the heart, or the lungs, or the kidneys? What would it be? I'll tell you what it would be. Dead. Because it needs its other parts. It goes just a little bit of a step different. Just as a band is, come on, there we go. Just as a band music is designed to have the pieces complement one another, the body parts are designed to serve one another. Think about it. Your heart pumps the blood carries the oxygen feeds the brain feeds the spinal column to tell all your different extremities what it's supposed to do. They are serving one another. In a healthy, complete body, there is no such thing as an inactive or disconnected part. Again, let that wrap through your brain for a second. It doesn't exist. If you have a part of your body disconnected from your body, then what is that part that is disconnected considered? Dead. It can't survive. It has to have its connecting point. If it doesn't connect, then it doesn't get the flow of blood. It doesn't get the signals from the brain. It's not part of the body. If it is disconnected, it is going to die. But a body that is not complete will always make living life a little more challenging. You ever met somebody that lost a leg or a hand as an adult? I want to tell you something. I had a cousin, he passed away this past year. Had to be the most gracious person you ever would have met. His name was Alvin Rucker. He lost his legs in a battle to diabetes. First, he lost one leg. And then after that, they decided they had to take a few toes off the other one, and then they had to take a foot. And little by little, they ended up having to take his whole leg. And this was a man that used to run and jump and go and hike and everything else. And he lost parts of his body. And he continued living, but life was never the same. You understand the church is like that? We are all one part. Things can't negatively happen to you that don't impact me, because we are all one body. And when you're not here, I really do miss you, because guess what? Part of me is missing, because we are one body. We are designed to fit together. That's why we call it a body of believers. There is no part of us that is insignificant. There is no part of us that is unimportant. In a body, a diseased part impacts the entire body. If your life's not going so good, my life's probably not going so good. We need to remember this. This was the design of the church. For what we see in Acts chapter 2 with the good times, the dark times are where the church really shows itself, because we should be there serving one another. All parts have a purpose. So let's talk about your skin. Okay? Have you ever really fathomed scientifically how important your skin is? Let me tell you all the jobs this stuff does. Okay? Here it is. There you go. It provides a protective barrier against physical injury, hazardous substances. So your skin is your first line of defense to everything. Remember, fellowship and skin. The fellowship is the skin of the church. It's the first line of protection. You know what else your skin does? It prevents loss of moisture. It's an insulator. This is why when you get really hot and you sweat, your pores open up and it's just releasing just the right amount, because your skin is there to make sure you don't lose too much and you retain the right amount. Okay? That's what it does. It reduces harmful effects of UV radiation. So again, your skin, as the sun is beating down, this is why we get things like sunburns. And okay, I've never had one in my entire life. Some people are blessed with being able to get suntan. I have 2 states, burn and peel. Okay, that's me. I burn, I turn lobster red, and then I peel. That's all I get. But you understand what your skin is doing. There are parts of your body that if the UV rays from the sun hit it directly, it would kill it. The skin's like, I got this. I'll take the first line. I'll take the hurt. I'll take the burn for what's coming in. It acts as a sensory organ. Don't believe me? Try and hammer in a nail and miss the nail one time and hit your thumb. Your skin is going to send out things all across your body to say, the thumb has just been hit, and your mouth is going to yell, ow, and maybe a few other things, depending on how hard you hit it. Okay, you're going to probably want to cuddle it or whatever. Your body is reacting to one little part. Ever stub your toe? Oh my gosh, it hurts everywhere, doesn't it? If you have back problems, you understand. If your back is hurting, nothing feels good. Okay, and that's because your body is designed to be all one thing. It helps regulate your temperature. So it either keeps you hot or cold. It's the thing that sends the brain to think, hey, it was getting a little warm in here. Turn on the air conditioner. Let's sweat some to let something. I'm going to open up and go. That's your skin. Your skin's doing the talking. It is the immune organ that detects infection and etc. So it's the first thing to say, we have an infection. Send out those white blood cells. I see them coming. I've been broken. There's a cut. Send somebody to. That's your skin's job. And by the way, it isn't just a thing that does this. It actually does some production. It produces vitamin D. Your skin is the thing that takes in the sunlight and produces that wonderful vitamin D that your body so needs. And oh, by the way, it's how people see you. Really? When you look in your mirror, do you say, look at my heart? Do you say, look at my brain? Some of us stick out our tongue and say, look at my tongue. But reality, when you look in the mirror, what are you looking at? Your skin. You're looking at the outer shell that God wrapped around everything. What an important organ it is. And you realize fellowship is the skin of the church. Everybody thinks that ministry forms fellowship. We've got it backwards. Fellowship first, and ministry grows out of fellowship. If we just try to keep making programs to get people involved in the programs, it's never going to work. The way it works is the people are getting together and they find common interests. They say, let's do this. And ministries are born. We had the knitting ministry here for a long time, for a few years. Never in my life would I have said, let's start a knitting ministry. There was one lady that was her interest, and she started calling other ladies, and she got them there, and they said, let's knit. And you know what? It turned out to be a wonderful ministry in its time. You see, that's the way the church was designed to work. We begin serving one another, and the ministries kind of happen organically. If I'm trying to plan ministries, it's because my fellowship is sick, and it needs a little healing. In Acts chapter 2, verses 42 through 47, it was all about bodybuilding. That's what they're doing. They're building up the body to get ready for what's coming next. Where we see the early church in Acts chapter 2, they're all about serving one another, not filling positions. How many titles did you see in those verses I read you? Who was the minister of the first church? Don't know. Who were the elders of the first church? Don't know. Who were the deacons of the first church? Okay, we got some of that in Acts chapter 7. We got a few names. But you do get the point. The point is they did not fill positions. They were about serving one another. They were not just hanging out to have parties for the sake of having parties. They were building connections. They were going to one another's house and eating so that they could learn about one another. You will be surprised what you can learn about a person when you're sitting around a table with them eating. You might learn some things you don't want to know. But you'll learn so much about them because there's just something about gathering together for food. This is where the idea of fellowship suppers came from. Let's get together and eat. They were no longer living as individuals. Did you catch it? They were indeed living as a body. It was no I or me or want for me. It was all about one another. What can I do for you today? How can I help? How can I serve you? What's missing in your life? What do you need? They were all about this idea of one another. Now, was it perfect? No. Did they have conflicts? Yeah, keep reading through Acts. You'll see they had lots of conflicts. But the question becomes, is from a Jesus perspective, how important is serving one another? I'm going to finish up this morning in John chapter 13. And this is Jesus' story. You see, this is where we get our Last Supper from. And they had gotten together to celebrate the Passover, and the meal is progressing, and Jesus knew this is my last physical night on this planet. Therefore, I get one more lesson to teach these guys before I go to the cross. What topic do I wish to teach my very last lesson on? And here it is. Jesus knew that the Father had put all things under his power and that he had come from God and was returning to God. So he got up from the meal, took off his outer clothing, and wrapped a towel around his waist. After that, he poured water into a basin and began to wash his disciples' feet, drying them with a towel that was wrapped around him. He came to Simon Peter, who said to him, "Lord, are you going to wash my feet?" Jesus replied, "You do not realize now what I'm doing, but later you will understand." Jesus' very last lesson that he ever gets to teach, that exclamation point, "I'm all done." Jesus is leaving the building. It's not about his second coming. He doesn't sit down and explain to him when I'm coming back. It's not about worship instructions. Not about scripture study, not about how to parse the words, not about how to put the lessons together, not about what works are more important than the others. It's not about how to be an effective outreach person. Really? I would have thought that would have been real important. But no lesson on how to be an effective outreach person. It's not about a crash course in how to use the Holy Spirit when it arrives, so he doesn't even teach that one. It's not even a lesson in prayer. I would have thought that would have been Jesus' last lesson, right? He'd already taught that lesson. They had that. They got that. But what he did teach, because he knew how much we were going to struggle with this idea, serving one another. That was his very last lesson. And therefore, I think that it's a lesson that we need to pay attention to. We need to understand. Now, when he arrived at Peter, Peter said, no, Jesus, my feet are way too dirty for you, and that's a humiliating job. You're not doing that. And Jesus tells him, you know what? You'll understand later, Peter. His story continues, and this was the conclusion, the very last conclusion to the very last lesson that Jesus would teach to his disciples before he would go to the cross and die, rise again, ascend, and then say, hey, church, get busy. Here's his conclusion. When he had finished washing their feet, he put on his clothes and returned to his place. Do you understand what I have done for you? And I get the feeling that Jesus is like, right here. Do you understand what I have done for? I got a feeling he's very loud and very deliberate. He wants them to understand. He asked them, you call me teacher and Lord, and rightly so, for that is what I am. Now that I, your Lord and teacher, have washed your feet, you should also wash one another's feet. I have set you an example that you should do also as I have done for you. Very truly I tell you, no servant is greater than his master, nor is messenger greater than the one who sent him. Now that you know these things, you will be blessed if you talk about them, if you pray about them. What's his last words? If you do them. It's going to take action. And you know what the cool thing is? That's a better conclusion than I could have ever written to this particular sermon.